we're at today, how we got there, and all that good stuff. So, for example, we had ASA, right? And then we acquired a company called SourceFire. So that allowed us to combine ASA with firepower. And at that point, the OS for ASA is still there, right? But then we had to do a service map that pumped the traffic in and out of the firepower module, which required an SSD on the 5500s in order to add that next-gen firewall or next-gen IPS services for the ASA. That's when we bought SourceFire. That was our only answer at one point as a firewall that came in and out, right? Now, with that being said, we've now made to manage the ASA, you had ASDM or you had CSM, right? For the firepower, you had FMC. FMC is very similar to CSM, but for the firepower module.
Fireside, right?
Firepower Management Center.
Okay.
It used to be Fireside, but it got renamed to Firepower. We got rid of Fireside, and now everything's Firepower.
Okay.
So that's what was the very beginning. Now what we've done is we've created now FTD. Okay? FTD is a combination of one OS with the capability of ASA with firepower services in one unified image. Okay, so the 55XX, the 21XX, the 41XX, and the 9300s all can handle FTD. This comes in a OS, also a virtual version as well. Okay, so the capabilities you get with this are managed through FMC from a centralized management console. There's also an on-box management called FDM, which is called Firepower Device Manager. So this is nothing but an on-box HTTPS GUI for the box. It replaces ASDM, okay? But it's natively on the box. But if you didn't want to do on-box, you do everything on FMC, okay? Now with that, it comes with the capabilities of, let's say, firewall, right? It can now do IPS. It now can do AMP, which is Advanced Malware Protection. You now can do QoS. You can do site-to-site VPN. In the new release now, we can do remote access VPN, and basically firewall, NAT, SSL, encryption, decryption.
So firewall, IPS, AMP,
Advanced Malware, QoS, site-to-site VPN, remote access VPN, NAT, SSL.
Then you have like a web.
URL.
URL filtering, right?
A what?
URL filtering, or is it URL filtering?
Yes, URL filtering. Yes.
Web security, right?
It's integrated in the box, not umbrella. It's integrated.
Integrated. Yeah. And then IPS, and the antivirus, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the main difference between the ASA and the FTD?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll go over competitive information shortly. But before we do that, look at the screen here. This is FMC, what you're looking at. So FMC, we're going to go to malware events, and this is AV and also the malware 0 day. It's integrating a sandbox technology called ThreatGrid, where we essentially can take an EXE and submit it into a virtual appliance, in a virtual environment, replay it, kind of like the FireEyes, kind of like Wildfire for the PAN or FortiSandbox for Fortinet, right? But we have it on box. So we don't have to use a separate solution. We don't have to, it's all integrated in the same pricing unit here versus our competitors. The problem is, you got to go buy Panorama. You got to go buy FortiSandbox. Or, you need FireEye, but we have it. So we have device trajectory. You see here that I have malware at this particular IP address, and I can click on it and I can see the trajectory of how the malware got affected and how it spread throughout the actual environment. And all that was actually integrated into the actual firewall technology itself. What we're looking at here is we have the exact same software for Azure and for AWS. So it doesn't have to be just a physical appliance. It can also be a virtual appliance that we use in the cloud as well. Okay. So with that, we can build firewall rules coming in and out. When it goes back there, I'll show it to you. We can build IPS rules. Now the difference between my IPS and my competitors are a static IPS versus we're a dynamic IPS. How that works is this. I build things based off network discovery. Okay. And I do a scan of the whole network, and I do something called a host profile, right? So I have a list of every host that you have within your environment. And then I have my IPS that does things on impact, 0 through 4.
Okay.
1 being the worst, 4 being okay, and 0 being informational. Okay. So when I have this host profile, when I do when I see an intrusion come in, and let's say it's a bad intrusion, like it's they're trying to attack like an Adobe Flash player. Okay.
Okay.
But it goes to an IP that's not vulnerable, it'll probably get a marker of number 2 because it's not vulnerable. You're trying to hit a machine that's already patched, so it's not that important. So we're eliminating the false positive. But let's say that same attack comes in and we attack something that is vulnerable, that's not patched, it'll hit impact 1 and say you must set an action. You must do something now. And it will auto-tune based off that and based off the host profiles and the types of traffic you have. So the IPS profile will come in and say, we recommend that you disable this or we enable that. So you don't have to go in there and manually do it every day.
To give you like a recommendation, right?
Yes, absolutely. Based on your traffic patterns and based on the types of traffic that we have coming in and out. That is the number one biggest difference between us and our competition. I was at Fortinet for 10 years. I was at Palo Alto for 4. So
really? Okay.
so with that being said, when I set categories in IPS on Fortinet, you come in and you have these categories, right? And you have to set these categories. Say capture it all, or do only, or do these, or whatever. But then you have to wait 2 days, 3 days later to see what the traffic patterns are. Okay. And then based off that, I decide what I want to delete or not use, because at that point, I have to determine that traffic patterns, right? Versus us, we look at those traffic patterns and then we identify the flows of traffic. Palo Alto is very similar, but they do one really cool thing, is they don't do host scanning. What they do is they do behavior analytics, and they look at patterns and then determine what needs to be enabled or disabled. So we do static, we do a little bit of Palo Alto, but we also do the recommendations of auto-tuning automatically for you and try to eliminate a lot of those false positives as much as we can. Now, above and beyond that, we'll talk about AMP. Okay. So AMP has what I call the AUDI symbols. They have multiple symbols they go through to. They might be like fuzzy fingerprinting, one-on-one matching. It might be sandboxing. It might be analytics or whatever. So what we do is we always check the SHA of the file and make sure if it's known good or known bad. If it's known good, you can design to say, well, I don't need to do sandboxing. I don't need it for analysis. You told me it's bad. We're good. Let's block it. Move on, right? Or we can always say, it's bad, but I still want to sandbox. I still want to send it to record. I still want to do dynamic analysis, or do AV matching or whatever it might be. So that's the key thing that we do on box for firepower or FTD. Versus my competitors, you have to send it to a virtual solution called Fortinet Sandbox, or use a cloud solution called Wildfire, right? And at that point, you submit it. You can't say this, but they may or may not have mitigation attempts. So you might be able to sandbox it, but it may not mitigate to their firewall. It may mitigate to their email solution. So there's this, what happens if it breaks out? What's going to block it, right? Then you manually have to go into the firewall and say, well, it said it's bad, so now I have to go create a rule for it. So we have something called retrospective security, where if we find a threat on 0 day, we will update all of our appliances that have AMP, from Meraki to Firepower, AMP for endpoints, to ESA. Thank you. I was going blank there for a minute. WSA, so it'll automatically send that 0 day known problem that we identified and retrospectively update everywhere that we have AMP. So our firepower and firewall will instantly integrate with all the things seamlessly. What we're looking at here on the screen is the summary dashboard. Forgive me, I don't have any data, but it'll show me unique applications over time, top applications. I can see Content Explorer. Here we're adding a device. You'll see that I'm adding an actual FTD device. It's virtual, maybe an AWS or somewhere out there. I can modify the actual interfaces, either be inside out or maybe a span port. I do NATing, I do routing like BGP, OSPF, not recommended to be a full-blown routing table for BGP. I do DHCP or relay for DHCP or integrate OpenDNS. Access control here is where I'm designing the actual policies. Very similar to like Fortinet or Palo Alto, you have the build the policy, you associate what level of intrusions or malware detection you want to do. So here I have any and any traffic, the destination ports I'm allowing, hit the action allow, and I can keep building rules as I go through it from top down like any other normal firewall. You look at it, looks very similar to a Palo Alto. If you're experienced with it, you kind of have that left-right type look. Here I have the inspection. I'm enabling the intrusion policy, the malware file policy, and at that point I'm enabling, even though it says allow, but I might have rules within there that say block this policy or block this malware, block this intrusion. But we're allowing the traffic to go in from an inspection point of view. We also have VPN, site-to-site VPN. We have remote access VPN on certain code, like available on our 2100 series, soon to be released for all of our different firewalls out there. So if you ask me what are my weaknesses, I am not fully baked yet. And the reason why is because I had ASA for the longest time.
Yeah.
My kids just got born. They're growing up a little. They're a little ugly right now, but they're going to be very beautiful in the future. And with that being said, we're still in the infancy stage where I'm trying to integrate remote access VPN, some of the other features that we have like Flex VPN and so on into the bots, but it's taking me time, and I eventually get there.
Yeah, because like we have a case currently, okay,